Revision 4, Business Management, Unit 3, Outcome 3, Operations Management. Okay, here's our study design key knowledge points. And the first thing I'm going to point out is two areas within this. This is a must. Your knowledge of the key elements of an operations system, inputs, processes and outputs. This has been examined on nearly every exam going back nearly as long as I can remember. I've been doing this for a while. Okay, the other area that I'd like to point out is these strategies is probably about 40% of the whole study design for this area. So it may even be about half of it really, because you've got to know so much within each of these. So different facilities design and layout strategies, materials management strategies, etc., etc. So let's get into each key dot point and have a look at some exam questions in relation to that, to each one. So the operations function and its relationship to business objectives and the business strategy. Oh, that's my phone. All right, so you've got here the relationship of how the organisation can improve the productivity, the efficiency, to reduce wastage. It's this whole area of study, this operations management area of study, is all about trying to increase the competitiveness of the organisation. And you can do this in a number of ways. Obviously, we're going to look at strategies around quality, facilities design, layout, materials management, technology, etc. And you keep coming back to this area of study being the area in which we focus on trying to gain efficiency within the organisation. And of course, that is reducing the number of inputs required to produce outputs. So we remember that efficiency is measured, is a measure of productivity. Productivity is a measure of efficiency, and it's measured by the simple equation outputs over inputs. Please don't get that the wrong way around, as we've seen people do. So it's about trying to increase the level of output for a given number of input, or it's trying to reduce the number of inputs to maintain a certain level of output. Either way, you are increasing your rate of productivity and therefore your efficiency. And this can be done a number of ways, as we will go through within this study design. And of course, within human resources, when you go to Unit 4, you can increase by having increased worker output, by having more highly motivated staff, etc., etc. All right. One thing we might just quickly put down, sorry for that, is that if you can meet this objective of increased efficiency, you will then lead to your key strategic outcomes. So your key strategic outcomes of market share, reducing costs, greater shareholder return, you will achieve these, or you're more likely to achieve them, if in fact you have increasing, or you're looking to increase your efficiency. Okay, that's the first dot point. The second dot point is all about the characteristics of operations management within manufacturing and service organisations. And to this end, it would seem that the study design just wants you to sort of draw a line in the middle and say, all right, that's manufacturing over here, and this is service organisations over here. So of course you've got your car companies on the left here, and you've got your banks or insurance and things like that on the right. Now you need to know and be able to talk about the differences, and you need to know at least three differences between operations in manufacturing and service. The first and most obvious is that the tangibility of the output. All right. So the manufacturing, of course, has a tangible output, such as a car in this case, whereas the service output is intangible. It is something like you have received a flight, or in fact you've received banking services. So you don't have something physical in your hand that you can touch, smell, eat, whatever. All right, past exam questions, and I've got a couple here, I think. There's a case study. This is a large case study, which is why I haven't put it there. That case study is freely available, obviously, from 2012, and it's about an organisation undergoing change and I think pursuing a higher quality product rather than trying to compete with big players. But in this case, it is describe one difference between the operations management of manufacturing, such as Webster's, so this is a chocolate company, and a service organisation. In this case, you should provide your own example, and then use your example to actually illustrate what it is that's happening in your answer. So you might just do the tangible, intangible here. So that was from 2012. All right. In 2011, for 3 marks, there was outlined 3 differences between operations management of a service, sorry, that's a misprint, and a manufacturing. So it's the same type of question, except you've only got 1 mark each, hence the word outline and not explain. So it's just 1 mark for each difference. So you punch out 3 differences. If you've got time, you would put in examples here, but you've got a limited amount of space. Make sure that they are distinctly different from each other, and you must know at least 3, and I would suggest 4 differences between operations in a manufacturing environment as opposed to a service environment. Okay, so here we come to this key area of inputs, process, and outputs. These are the key elements of the operations management system. With these, you need to be able to define each one. So what is an input? So define the word input and then provide examples for both manufacturing and service organisations. So the inputs are going to be different for different organisations, and particularly between manufacturing and service organisations. So it's important that you apply each of these 3 elements to different types of businesses, and you'll see in the questions, including charities and that sort of thing, and you'll see there's an example of that. And also there's a really important aspect of linking ethical and socially responsible management practices to each of these phases. And there's been quite a few questions on that in past exams. Let's have a look at a few. In this one from 2013, there is describe one ethical and socially responsible issue that Alice may consider from each of the 3 elements of the operations management system. So here you have to take Alice's business and work out what her inputs are, and then discuss how she could be more ethical with her inputs or more socially responsible. How could she be more socially responsible with her transformation process? And same with outputs. That's quite difficult, but when you unravel it and you just break it down in your structure of 3 2-mark answers, it's probably not as difficult, but it does require some thought before you go screaming in, because it's worth 6 marks. All right. Again, in 2010, we can see that there's a charity. They talk about the Charity Foundation, which is obviously a charity, a not-for-profit organisation. And it says, explain the key elements of the Charity Foundation's operation management system, and obviously provide an example of each key element. Now, that's a lot of lines, 24 lines for answering that question. This is probably one of those questions where you can make up a bit of time, and you may not use all the lines. But again, you have to distinctly choose elements that are distinctly related to the Charity Foundation and a not-for-profit organisation. All right, so you've got to know the key elements, and you've got to know them in terms of being ethical and socially responsible. The next dot point is about productivity and business competitiveness. So what's the connection between those two? Their importance and their impact on the operations system. All right. Basically, you can assume that every type of organisation wants to become more competitive and wants to increase their productivity. So you need to be able to define and explain productivity and link it to business competitiveness. Obviously, if you're reducing your costs, that is increasing your rate of productivity, then you will become more competitive because you can sell your products at a cheaper price by maintaining your profit margin. And this will increase your sales and make you more internationally competitive, which means you may get more sales and exports overseas. That is all discussed, or at least talked about in this link. Increase your productivity, bring down your cost of production here, decrease your sale price while maintaining your profit margin, increase your sales therefore, and therefore you'll increase your profit, and that will lead to all sorts of expansion, market share, that sort of stuff. Okay. So that's a key set of links there that you must know about. Their importance in the operations management system, I think, comes up when we start going through the strategies. And here is the first of our strategies. So there's a group of, there's 4 areas under which we have strategies. So strategies adopted to optimize operations, including facilities design layout. Now that's not a strategy in itself. That's just a heading for which we then have the product layout, the fixed position layout, and the process layout. And there's a couple of others, including retail and office. In relation to these layouts, you must have knowledge of being able to recognise a layout from a particular case study. You must be able to compare, that is, similarities and differences of layouts. You must be able to know the advantages, therefore be able to recommend and justify a layout. And in some cases, if you're going to justify one layout over another, you need to know the advantages and disadvantages here. And there have been recently, at least one question that we'll have a look at in relation to facilities design and layout. Remember that is just the heading or area under which these are the strategies. They're the strategies there. All right. For 5 marks, after you understand that Freddie Campbell is setting up a new business in Melbourne that will manufacture and sell furniture, identify, describe, and justify facility design and layout strategy that she could use for manufacturing the furniture. Okay, so you could do probably either product or process here, depending on how you envisage her furniture to be. Now, you're not given much information here, so you could justify either strategy, but you need to know how that strategy works in order to justify it. And, there I think we would look at the average marks for that to be quite low, because I think people would struggle to talk about that for 20 lines. All right, the next area under which we have strategies is materials management. Now, I'm going to disappoint you here by having absolutely no exam questions on materials management, but that's because there haven't been any since 2010 rather, maybe before that. Makes you think it could be on this year's exam. Now, different types of materials management strategies include MPS, MRP, supply chain management. My students would know that I'm a huge fan of just in time because of the benefits you can then talk about, and that includes justification. And again, be prepared to recommend, justify a strategy within materials management. I would suspect you need to know all of those and how they work, and whether they apply well to service or manufacturing organisations. Okay, the next one is the management of quality. These are the non-negotiables. You must know these 3 types of quality management strategies: and quality control, which is reactive, quality assurance, which is proactive, and total quality management, which is very proactive. I think you should know the 3 key elements or core elements of total quality management. And of course, that would be important if you're going to talk about total quality management as a strategy. Just like the other ones, be prepared to recommend and justify one of these. Be prepared to compare them. So we had in 2012, just 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, we had a Webster's chocolate case study. As I've said before, that's a large case study. You can look that up. Identify and explain 2 methods from the strategy of managing quality that Webster's could use to ensure a high quality chocolate product. So you've got to know 2 of the 3, and you need to be able to explain them here. Okay, so I would choose probably quality control and total quality management, unless they're distinctly different. So you can talk about those 2 methods. Here you don't have to recommend one or justify it, so you could just explain the actual methods and how they would relate to Webster's, the chocolate manufacturers. Okay. The 4th and last area is the extent and use of technology. In here, there's a clear distinction about which technologies are good for manufacturing and which are good for service-related industries or organisations. Robotics, computer-aided design or manufacturing, which has led to computer-integrated manufacturing. Different office technologies. E-commerce is very important for you to understand, particularly for services. And you should understand how the banks and the airlines have used e-commerce to increase their efficiency or reduce their costs. Both, really. Again, recommend justify strategy, compare strategies. Implementation of any strategy should lead to an increase in the performance of the organisation by improving the productivity and competitiveness over the medium term. If you are going to justify a strategy, you have to bring it back to this point. In other words, say how the strategy will increase the productivity and therefore efficiency of the organisation. If you don't do that, you may not be meeting all the criteria, okay, particularly if you're justifying. So a past exam question from 2013 discussed the likely consequences of banks or other large-scale organisations introducing new technology to optimise operations. So here you could discuss, anything, and there's not even a number given, so is it 2 or 3? I would suspect, you've got discuss here is the advantages and disadvantages. So you've got to do possibly 3 advantages of introducing new technology, and then 3 disadvantages. And that's the way I would approach this. So you are immediately making it easy for the marker. So you're saying, okay, the consequences could be positive, 3 advantage, discuss pros and cons, and then what are the 3 disadvantages? So here you might have things like redundancies for staff, lack of job security, the dumbing down of jobs. 3 advantages, obviously, increase in efficiency, increased service delivery for customers, that sort of thing. So, this is a key word, obviously, discuss, and I think this question was probably answered poorly, but when you break it down, it's sort of, it shouldn't be that difficult if you've obviously done your revision on technology as a operations management strategy. Okay. The last dot point here is really important and has been assessed a lot and consistently over the exams. That is the ethical and socially responsible management of an operations management system. So, what you've got to do is be able to apply ethical and socially responsible practices specifically to inputs, processes and outputs, as per the question we saw earlier. You've also got to be able to apply them to the different strategies, areas and strategies. All right, so there's a number of different questions that you can do, but this is where the examiners have really sort of analysed ethics and social responsibility and said, okay, within operations, how can you be more ethical and socially responsible? To that end, we've got 2013. We looked at this earlier, so I won't go into it again, but it applies the key elements across the social responsibility area. So you've got to know both, and you've got to be able to talk about inputs, processes and outputs in relation to how they can be ethical and socially responsible. In 2011, the key elements of an operation management system, they've even given you the key elements here. Discuss how these social responsible management practices could affect each of these elements. This is very difficult, but again, it requires you to have an understanding of how being ethical and socially responsible may impact your inputs, processes and outputs. So while at the start of this topic we've talked about, must be efficient and operations is all about increasing efficiency, it also needs to keep into account ethics and social responsibility. Okay, the last question from 2010 that we're going to look at is identify and describe 2 operations management strategies. So any 2 strategies, discuss the benefits to an organisation of adopting an ethical and socially responsible approach to management in these areas. So you need to look at a strategy such as total quality management or just in time, and look at the benefit, discuss the benefits. That's in this case, not the advantages and disadvantages because they've said benefits. So in this case, it's just what are the benefits of adopting ethical and social responsibility approach to your just in time or to total quality management. Now, total quality management would be a really good one to choose because there's a lot of links between employee empowerment and how that can be described as socially responsible. So your choices of your 2 operations management strategies here is vital to the success of your answer and to how coherently you write. You may be wondering why the 2014 exam is not featured in this PowerPoint. That's because last year the 10-mark question was on operations. So we'll have a look at that separately. I don't have enough room in the PowerPoint to put that question up. So we might have a look at the we might have a look at that separately in class. But the 10 marker was a combination of different things on operations. Okay, there'll be another video for you to watch on Unit 4 coming pretty soon.